Wow, Reggie.
T.
They
Wow.
finally got us. Social
Wow.
media. Here we are, doing our first podcast. Wow.
Man, I'm just thinking back. We thought about this years ago, and
At least 2 years ago.
at least 2 years ago, and finally, after hearing so many people ask, "Where's our podcast?" and now we're at this place. I'm excited.
Oh, man.
I know we used to edutainment, we're used to moving
Jumping up and down,
jumping
but we gotta
up
stay in
and
the-
down,
gotta
but
stay
we
in
got to
these
stay
chairs,
here
right?
and be still. That's a little awkward for us because we
Yeah.
like engaging
Yeah.
audiences. And
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm excited. I'm
Good.
excited about the direction. I'm excited about the opportunity to share this vision, share what we do, share our mission. I'm just excited about this whole space that we're in.
Let's talk about the journey, because we've been known around the country as the Milk Dud Twins,
Two ball head brothers.
the mean guys on campus. We ran our leadership institutes, and now here we are with this thing called Two Men and a Stool.
Wow,
And I'm
man.
pretty sure people are worried about this elephant in the room,
Oh,
and we'll
wow.
we'll get
Just
to
looking
that.
up, thinking.
We'll get to that, but let's talk a little bit about our journey, because when we talk about second grade spelling bee champ,
Yeah.
that means you were doing pretty good at one time.
Yeah.
All
I
the way
was-
through the 5th grade.
All the way to the 5th grade, doing extremely
made it to
well.
Harper High School
Yes, sir.
in Atlanta, Georgia. And your 9th grade year, you decided to fight the coach.
Well, it's not anything I'm proud of, but yes, in the 9th grade, as I talk about so many other kids, whether I was angry, whatever was going on, it wasn't my cognitive ability, because I had cognitive ability, but it was that ability to deal with, to adjust, around the things that were surrounding
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
and poverty and all those other things that were coming at me. And so, I fought my coach, and as a result, I was expelled from all the schools in Atlanta, Georgia,
Wow.
and the Atlanta
Yeah.
school system.
Yeah, I've heard this story
I know.
a gazillion times.
Right.
But it always takes me, because I think about when you tell me about the times, if you walk by a guy right now and it just so happened to be your dad, you wouldn't know it was him. And I couldn't imagine growing up without my dad in my life. You know how much I talk about him. You had a chance to meet him before he passed, one of the great men in my life. But I'm wondering, how do you grow up without a dad?
For me, T, honestly, Tony, I think about it, and as I reflect back, and I see so many other young men, and I think about why so many young men making some of these choices. Iron, we always say iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that father figure in your life, you're on that maze of life and that journey. There's so many other young men. I'm not an anomaly, and by no means. But I will say, when we're talking about it, and I reflect, no, I've never seen my father. I don't know how he looks, and I hear your story, and really, I'm just like, wow, not jealous, but envious of the fact the relationship you had with your dad and your journey coming from a two-parent home, and just seeing the struggles that my mother and other mothers like her had in trying to raise kids without resources, without what we call stuff. And everybody wants that stuff. So my journey of being expelled, imagine, I was in the streets for 2 years, doing absolutely nothing with my life for 2 years, hustling,
Wow.
burglarizing,
Wow.
stealing, armed robbery.
So you're talking about a very unlikely meeting, because when you talk about that type of stuff, I celebrate the fact I'm not a scholar,
Yeah.
but I had 12 years perfect attendance. From elementary school all the way through high school.
Wow.
And that was the influence of the fear of my dad knowing if I don't go to school, and having fun going to school and kind of liking it, especially the time that I was in high school. So you talk about us growing up with them two different lifestyles, only being 9 miles apart. I grew up in Southwest Atlanta. You grew up in Bankhead, and we've heard the stories about Bankhead, and us being from Southwest Atlanta, the only story we knew not to go to Bankhead.
Yeah.
But you taught me different about Bankhead and the whole thing.
Because, see, I think sometimes when people look at people, and whether it's students in schools, whether people coming from various communities, sometimes we look at that and we start judging and saying not as good, or these are bad folks, and et cetera. But sometimes poverty can cause you to do some things that you otherwise would not do. And so for me, I look back and I digress just a little bit as I reflect back at that, but I also want to bring it forward to you and how we ended up getting here, watching you, seeing you, the work you were doing. I'm over here doing something totally different and just unlikely. Yes, if the journey stopped there, yes, I did those things. But when I think about so many other kids and I think about the work you were doing as a principal,
Yeah.
of an alternative school.
Yeah.
You were dealing with the Reggie Beatys of the world that sometimes people give up on.
Right. I didn't know. I didn't know that was going to be my path. When you talk about journeys, because at the time I was working, when I first heard about the program that I started with that you were mentioning, I was working at a department store as a floor detective. And one young lady just happened to say, I think you'll fit our programs. I want you to come in and talk to my boss.
Right.
So I went in and talked to this tall guy, 6'3".
Dave Lewis.
My man, my
Dave
mentor.
Lewis.
Dave Lewis.
What a
I
man.
met with him. I talked with him about 3 minutes. He said, shut up, I got it. I know what I want you to do. We're going to go next door. I want to introduce you to another guy.
Neil Shorthouse.
Little short white guy, a great guy.
Great
one
guy.
of the best guys I've ever met in my life. And they decided right then and there that I was an educator. I had no plans. I didn't go to school. Went to Clark College, Clark Atlanta University, what you all know it as now. But that's where I went and got my bachelor's degree in business administration. Had nothing to do with education, but here I am on this path now that I've been doing this thing, or we've been doing this thing now for 30 years in education.
But
not traditional.
But it gets back to you say unlikely meeting though, non-traditional. In my case, yes, if the story stopped, I always talk about it and you laugh about it when I tell you I have a high school diploma, but why you shaking your head when I talk about my high school diploma?
Well, you told me you had got a GED, but I've never seen it. And there's no way that you can go to college without having proof of a high school diploma, leave college and go to the military, and while you're in the military, you go get your master's degree. None of that's legitimate without high school diploma. so I'm not altogether sure that you are a legitimate working business partner.
Well, I tell you this though, seriously, it's unlikely. I've only had 1 year of high school, and I got the GED, and I would like to say, from my perspective, Bobby Garrett and the organization Communities in Schools saved my life. Well, it wasn't Communities in Schools at that time.
Excellent.
But when it was Exodus, and they had a lot of street workers coming to those communities like the one I grew up in. And looking back, all the way that foundational thing was there.
Right.
I could read, I could write, I can compute. But when something else is missing and you want stuff because everybody else wants stuff, sometimes, as I mentioned before, sometimes poverty make good people do bad things. Doesn't mean they're bad people, but sometimes poverty make good people do bad things.
I get it.
And I think that's the space I was in as a kid.
So,
and I thank God for Bobby and Dave and
Neil
and Bill and others that created a space for kids like me who could go to this safe place. And
so you went to a program that I end up running, one of the programs.
That's what the unlikely meeting.
Yeah.
I went to the program that saved my life. You came, well, obviously you were not there then.
Right.
But
right.
you came and took over a program like the one I graduated from. And I think when I came back after retiring from the military, and us coming
20
together.
years, you did 20 years, right?
Yeah, I did 20 years. I was on my way for a full-bird colonel and made a choice, a decision, after seeing the work that you and others were doing, that I might need to do something else with my life. And that was a paradigm shift for me.
Right.
And still just seeing you and the work you were doing and enjoying and loving it, it was beyond. Obviously, when I think about teachers and I think about people who are in the kids' business, obviously, it's not enough money. It's a thankless job sometimes. And just seeing that, so man, I'm excited how the journey ended up. It wasn't intentionally or designed that way, but as you like to call it.
You said ended up. I don't like the word ended. I like met up. Because
Okay,
we're
I
still
like
on
that
the
too.
journey and
That's
we're
right.
moving
That's
along
right.
this path. Because when you
That's
talk
right.
about being a principal at an alternative high school for years,
Right.
being a dean of students at a college for years,
Right.
being the vice president of a college for years, and all of that stuff coming together in this mission as it used to impact lives of others, having all that experience. So when you look at those things and you talk about the men, us being the founders and the runners of this organization, I mean, I get excited about the fact that it's not the end,
Right.
but it's the meeting of the minds and we're ready to move forward with it.
Well, and, for us, just coming back and seeing us, being deans at a college, you being a principal, me being a vice president at a historically black college and university, just that trajectory. And now just coming back and seeing the work that we're doing around the country, we're helping schools create that environment that becomes healthy so learning can take
But
place.
it's good to know that our experiences collectively have built the company that we're working with now, because I think everything that we've done, when you talk about the graduation coach initiative, you're talking
Right.
about the Leadership Institute camps, we talk about us graduating from HBCUs, both of us knowing that experience, and just talking about the whole dynamics of all of our experience put on top of one place now where we can bring all these things together. And I had to tell you for a long time, when you talk about the way that our program and our process matured, you wanted to take out some of the elements of what we call military procedures. And I said, those things work, and we're going to teach people how to use them in a civilian life. So when we start talking about the program and the process, you'll hear more about how that impacted the change and the growth and the development of our program, because we moved from doing it like civilians or doing it with a little bit more of it, and I know you don't want me to say this, a military approach as far as the training goes.
Well, I think clarity needs to come. When you say military approach, that takes on a connotation that, oh, you're seeing Goma Pals and you're seeing the army.
Yeah.
No. Well, I think what you're saying is when you build an environment of processes and systems,
Right.
you create structure, you create an environment that becomes healthy. And I think when you start thinking about the military, that sometimes carries a different connotation. But I think for us, in the way we go about it, we talk to principals and leaders and say, you have to set the conditions that causes your school, parents. You have to set an environment in your home that sets the conditions. And so for me, that's what we do. But more importantly, when you think about the military, you think about that analogy you just made. It's creating that environment that's systemic, that processes and systems that people understand what you're trying to do and ultimately how we're going to get there. And so I just think two unlikely meetings that we grew up 9 miles apart, and then to come and be at this place. Like I said, man, I'm excited. I'm excited, obviously, about the work. But I'm also excited about
They
the
got us.
podcast.
Well, here we are with a podcast. 2 men and a stool.
Let me say something about it before you talk about it, Tony. Sometimes we go around. You remember we were at an event and people assumed that we were entertainers.
Well, because we like bag men. When we walk in the room, we got when we unload out of the minivan, we got 12 bags of stuff. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of equipment that we
Right.
move with.
So people think that, they're going to, maybe they're poets or they're going to sing, but it's the furthest thing from the truth. Maybe you can sing a little better than I can, but I think that what does this represent? I'm just going to say up top, this represents success. And so when people see this stool, we know the 2 men, but our brand, and everybody has a brand. Everybody has a logo. But when we think about our brand and people think about our image, it is 2 men and a stool. I know you were about to talk about the stool, but what is that? When
Well, you
talk about
said
the stool?
success, and the way we see this doesn't look that much, or it can take a lot of weight. But we said if these legs are in place and they're strong, they can carry anything that you put up here on top of this. So in order to be successful, you got to have these legs to hold this stool up. So if you can't set anything up here without these legs being right. And you can set anything up here if they are right. So if you want to be successful and make sure these legs are strong, this base can hold anything. It seems small, but this is sturdy. And we have 3 or 4 stools that we use, but this stool is appropriate for this particular conversation.
Yeah, but I think we're talking about the success of what? When we talk about the stool, in many ways, the success we're talking about is what do we need to do to create success for young people?
Right.
What do we need to do in schools to create success in the schools,
Gotcha.
in the classroom?
Gotcha.
What do we
Gotcha.
need to do to create success in your home as parents? And then how do we get young people, as you like to say, turned on to living so they can get turned on to learning? And when either one of those stools, if we take one of those legs off, it's going to fall over. And I think that's what we're trying, that's what we're telling people when we're out doing our workshops or our keynotes, traveling around the country. That's foundational. You have to have that building block, that structure in place. And when each one of these are strong, man, that's powerful.
So when we talk about the imagery and what this means, and when people ask those questions and we start breaking down each one of these legs and tell them how it fits into this realm of education and how do we apply this particular concept to education.
Right.
And we talk about what these 3 legs are. So, let's talk about, the first one I like to talk about, just the school, the educator, this leg right here has to be strong. When you're talking about the leg that actually provides the structure, the curriculum, the culture and the climate, all of those things, this is the first leg. So we'll talk more about it, but that's the first leg that we're talking about.
But just adding one more thing to it, so many times schools get blamed for everything. But schools are not equipped to deal with everything kids are coming to school with baggage. They're coming to school. So many kids are coming to school with different issues and challenges. And if all you do is say, we want to go into teaching and learning, is what we call, you may sometimes be put in that cart before the horse. And so when I think about it, and I think about what do we need to do to build that high-performing culture and climate in that school. And so many leaders make decisions that we're going to focus on the culture and climate first. Mm-hmm. Academics would be a byproduct if we get that environment, those healthy relationships between teachers and students, teachers and parents, administrators, and the district staff, the community, and the schools. I think that's what that represents. Without going into greater detail about it.
No, we there. Let's stay there. Let's stay there on that one leg. Let's finish it up because we're already there. We're talking about the school, the educate, all those things that go into this particular leg and the work that we do around how do you strengthen this leg. Because we tell everybody, we don't have anything to do with curriculum and instruction.
Even though we have people on our team.
Everybody wants us to go there.
Everybody wants us to go there, but we tell our team, we're in the business. What's our business?
Culture and climate. Is
Culture
our business.
and climate
That's it.
is our business.
And what does that look like? We talk about the it factor. Yeah. What do you do in your culture and climate to make your teachers, your students, and your parents to want to be a part? How do you create that it factor, the look, the feel, the smell, all of those things that we look at as we travel the country? Don't want to call in the names of any particular companies because we see companies that do this methodically and they do it pretty much like the military.
No matter where you go.
I'll give you a couple examples without calling any names. The cleanest restrooms on the highway. And you know a place that you go in, if you say thank you to them, what they say? It's my pleasure.
And but when you think about schools, I always say, sometimes kids don't get a choice or a vote. Adults, we get a choice and vote where we take our business, where we go out to lunch, whether it's dinner, but kids don't get a vote.
Go to the school
and so, but it is our responsibility to create, and I think that's what you're talking about in the classroom. No matter what you're teaching.
Right. Yeah.
No matter what. From the beginning to the end of the day, it ought to be an environment where people want to be there. Mm-hmm. And you can't allow the disruptive type of things to get in the way of academic prowess, whatever that ends up being in your school. And so I think the principals who have done it right, lots of principals we've worked with have done it right, is because they started with creating the environment. Because if you think about it, you look back and you think about some of the successes or failures around our country. So in many cases, the dropout rate hasn't changed drastically. In other words, the graduation rate in some cases haven't changed drastically. When you think about suspension, expulsions, you think about disruptions, in many cases, it hasn't changed drastically. But that has it has something to do with teaching and learning, but it has a lot to do with that environment that teachers create in their classrooms and principals and others create in the overall building of creating that high performance.
Is it okay for school to be fun and exciting and energetic and a place that you feel safe and happy to be there? Because I just told you I had 12 years of perfect attendance and I was not a scholar. But I went to school every day of my life when I was growing up because I liked going into that building. I loved going into Southwest High School. I went 5 years because we had 8th grade through 12th grade when I was growing up. I loved going to Beecher Hills Elementary School. I went to 3 schools in my life, 1 elementary school, 1 high school, and 1 college because I liked the culture and climate. And they had this thing they had the way that they did business. And they didn't shudder from it, they didn't change it. And that was what attracted me and made me want to go to school every day. I loved going to school without being a scholar.
And I think that's...
I know that don't say that much for me, but...
Well, the scholar part maybe, but no, seriously. Yeah, but think about it though. If you like going somewhere,
you gonna go?
It's like your favorite team. I love my favorite team. Mm-hmm. I feel like I have a relationship with that team, even though I don't necessarily have a direct relationship. But schools, when kids feel good about that place, I'm not talking about foolish behavior. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about when kids or adults feel good about being in that place, man, they're excited. You tend to see people want to be there. You see people have more buy-in. less destruction of the building, less disruptions in the classroom. All the other things that causes disruptive behavior.
Right.
When people like being there, people love being there, like what you just said. 12 years of perfect attendance. Well, I had that too up to like the 8th grade.
Don't do it. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. But think about it. If you like doing something, you're going to continue to go there.
So you think about this leg. When you think about this leg and all that goes into, and we say all the things we just talked about with this leg, those are things that have to happen intentionally and deliberate, because a lot of people take for granted that all these things are in place.
Right.
My it factor is in place.
Right.
My structure, my standard operating procedure.
Right.
And we say we don't take that for granted. We say this has to happen by plan, by design, and we don't make light of this leg, because if it doesn't happen, guess what happened to this school?
But I think that's when you have to be an immediatist. You know, if you know there's a problem, you can't let a problem linger. As a leader, you can't let that linger on and on and on.
Yeah.
And then it becomes cancerous. It starts spreading. But when you can address it with all stakeholders and create that environment, then it's a safe place. But safety happens because it's a happy place, it's intentional, it's deliberate. We don't just come out and say, hey, let's have a happy and safe school. No, what you have to do is be intentional about it to create it, thus creating an environment to let people know, here's the way, here are the norms. And everybody has to understand the norms, and leadership does matter. Leadership does matter, because if you're allowing it to happen.
Well, you know what? You get ready to do a training. And
oh man, I'm about to go there. You get me excited to go about it.
I'm gonna bring you back.
Let me go there. Bring me back. Bring me back in, because I'm about to go there. Because I'm excited.
Yeah, put it to a training. What we're gonna do though?
All right. Okay.
What the podcast is gonna
consist of.
Okay,
let me calm it down.
We're gonna bring principals on that have done this.
Yes.
And they know the
Have
importance
done what?
of high performing coaching climate. Went through the process.
Okay, they're going through
went through our process.
I got you.
And they can come in and speak on our behalf about the results they get from doing this first, and saying, without a doubt, if I don't get my coaching climate right first, I won't get anything else right. So not to cut you off, because you getting ready to start doing a whole training, because I heard you start using some of our training terminology.
Right.
Uh-oh.
Stop. I can't, because I'm excited.
But we got 2 more legs to talk about. We got 2 more legs.
I know, Tony, but I'm trying to be still and not jump out this chair, because I like moving. But I get it. I got it.
So
I'm excited.
Parent leg.
So,
parent
you know.
Parent engagement, PTA meetings, people coming to the building, parent night, academic night. That what we talking about?
Absolutely not. See, I'm looking back as a father, first of all, as a father. When I think about parent, and I always say that parent is the first educator in that child's life. I'm not talking about having multiple degrees or a degree in education, but if you could create that environment in your home, and I shared with you a couple of stories, and I'll come back to that.
Oh yeah, you got to tell that story. Yeah.
Well, I got to tell that story, but when you think about parents are busy. Schools want parents to be involved. But think about it, we have 2 legs. You have a strong leg over here called the school. You have another strong leg. Again, if kids are coming to school with a rucksack, not a book bag, but not a book bag full of books, but they're coming to school, some cases, with a rucksack full of garbage. And now teachers and principals have to pull all that out before they can even get to teaching and learning, because that kid is suffering. But I always say parenting has always been a two-person sport. I'm not talking about whether they're together or not.
Yeah.
But it is always, and both parents have to be and build that foundation. So for us, I'm looking back, when my daughters, who are both adults now, there was no roadmap. It was, and I think what we did, 15 years ago when we initially wrote the Parent Tool?
Paperback version.
Paperback version.
Right.
And then COVID came and we created a tool for parents on how to create a high-performing. There's a lot of research out there that talks about what parents should do and we say, let's give them a tool in English and in Spanish that walks them through that process of creating that high-performing coaching climate in their home.
Right.
So now you're sending that kid to school ready to learn. What do we need to do? I'm going to turn it over to you and let you just talk a little more about that from your perspective. But I do want to share that story. I want to come back to it because I was just so surprised at something that I observed.
Right. Well, I mean, we talk about parenting, and we've watched how all of our, whether they're sons or daughters or nieces and nephews, we watch some extraordinary parenting. And now we don't know whether that's innate or just being in a different environment or knowing our work. everybody's not parenting the same. So
Right.
what are those minimum things that we expect of a parent to do in their home? Because some people can't come to PTA meetings. Some people have a problem with transportation. Some people have a problem with childcare. What do we need you to do in your home that's going to boost your kid academically when they come to school? What are those practices that we say, 11 research-based, because the research says if you do these things as a parent,
Right.
you boost your child academically beyond anything you could ever imagine. So when we talk about the parent tool and those 11 research-based practices that we actually teach parents and we allow them to and do it at their own pace, and we don't go in and look into anybody's home or anything. They do their own evaluation or their own assessment of their home and say, I'm missing this, I'm not doing this. And if I start doing this, we've heard from hundreds of parents that said, I wish I would have been doing this when my kid was a first grader and all these things, but they didn't know it, and we said
Right.
this is the roadmap.
But T, I think we got to look back at what not just what people are saying and talking about. We know what happens when a child is not able to read by the third grade. Imagine 17-year-olds who can't read. It's happening around our country. We can look at the scores and we can see. So if a kid can't read, or if a kid's not coming to school and don't know what he or she is expected to do, sometimes kids act up. That's their way of showing they're in pain. And if we don't know how to get to that, then we're going to continue to lose so many kids. So when you think about the whole parenting piece in third grade, if every kid should be on grade level by the time they get to the third grade, second grade, first grade, but yet if this kid who's coming to school doesn't know his or her colors, doesn't know his or her
So how does
ABCs.
parenting impact that? How does
I mean, it's got to start early. Okay. I'll give you a prime example, and it's the darndest thing I saw. And you talked about a young man. The darndest thing I saw last week, I was watching my youngest daughter, who has a 19-month-old, and her husband. And I had seen it before, because I'm thinking, not because she's mine, but I watched them identify the color to a 19-month-old, and she went through all the colors, identifying all the colors. And so I was surprised at that. But then they told her to say your ABCs, and she just started saying her ABCs. They were not talking baby talk. They were speaking to her of an expectation, high expectation. And then they would say something like, A is for what? A is for apple. E is for elephant. So I'm just thinking at 19 months, what can happen if we focus on the business of our kids before they get to school, obviously. And now you have two strong legs. If you have a strong leg over here with the school, a strong leg over here with the parent, and that kid is coming to school ready to learn. School's got the business of teaching and learning. They know how to do that. But what they're asking is that parents send them a child that's coming to school ready to learn. I don't think that's too much to ask. And so when I saw that, it brought tears to my eyes, and I was just saying, man, every kid should be this way, to have that type of environment that he or she can be healthy, ready to learn. Even that she's not school age, 19 months. So imagine if they keep doing that, and if every parent did the same thing. So now schools they can take that child and build upon it, because like I said, teachers get blamed for so much, and they're the cornerstone foundation, and they need a lot more support from all of us in the community, parents, and et cetera. But again, I'm just thinking about those two strong legs and why parenting is so important, because that person is spending all that time with that child.
And when you think about that other leg, that third leg, this is what I get excited about.
That's your space right there. That's your space.
When we first met, we started putting together different programs. And one of the programs, what we call Performance Learning Center, we created 45 of those around the country with funding from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They gave us the money to create these Performance Learning Centers. And I told you about this thing that I used to do every morning when I had my alternative school called Morning Motivation.
Well, when you first told me that, I had to tell you.
We're not going to take that kind of time.
I wasn't going to. I told you, Tony, obviously I was the executive director building a team. And I said, Tony, we're not taking time for that.
I fought for it.
You fought for it.
I fought for it because
and
I knew the impact.
it's one of the best, say again?
I knew the impact because I said, when your kids come to school, they don't know the purpose of school sometimes. Right. They don't always know, or they're not always motivated. You don't always get a chance to check in with them, look them in the face. I said, we take 10, 15 minutes in the morning and we had morning motivation. We had a ritual, we had a routine. All the kids knew the Marvel Collins Creed. You know, all of the kids knew their own poem. A lot of them used Invictus. A lot of them used See It Through. But everybody had their poem that they had that was personal to them. But that was their time to get ready for school, as opposed to walking in the door and some teacher tell them, turn to page 12. And I ain't even excited about being here. And sometimes we would dance in the morning, we play music, we get silly,
So
we
you
tell
started
jokes.
off early, happy.
We started off happy in the
Everybody
morning.
happy.
And that was all about, that wasn't about the teachers. But the teachers liked it, but guess what that was about? That was about my students.
Well, guess what else you did? When you introduced it to me, I didn't get the concept at first, but once we started implementing it around the country and seeing so many other principals come back and tell us
I got the reputation, that's the morning motivation guy.
I can identify that Reggie's not ready for school.
Yes. Yeah.
That now I'm not ready to send Reggie in that classroom to disrupt whatever that environment.
Yeah.
I need teaching and learning to happen.
Yeah.
And you know, I have to tell you, I'm extremely proud. We started at what, 22 years ago?
Yeah.
And as a result of that initiative, 45 schools around the country, that over 50,000, I think someone told me last, almost 50,000 kids.
Wow.
Just us starting that initiative 22 years ago.
That would have dropped out.
In school, that otherwise would have dropped out if not for some intervention like that. Imagine 45, 50,000 young people dropping out who otherwise would be out in the streets or more importantly, wouldn't have those skill sets to go on and do some other things with their life, because the foundation of that is having a high school diploma. And so, yes, I'm proud about that, but I also think that coming in and personalizing the school, you mentioned earlier, let's have some fun. Well, you know, in our training, we don't come in here unless you want to have some fun. It's serious because we're going to take you on a roller coaster.
Right.
And that's what this does when you think about what's happening in our schools. And I know you're talking about the student part of that leg, but when people sometimes have an expectation, I know teachers get tired sometimes when you get the little Reggies coming to your school disrupting that environment. But Reggie's reaching out. Reggie's telling you, I'm in pain. Now, you may not know how to get to it, but I'm telling you I'm in pain.
Yeah, but Reggie not only reaching out, but Reggie don't understand why he crosses that threshold every morning. Because he hadn't connected success with education. When they see actors and they see basketball players, they're willing to practice 12 hours a day to become a basketball player because they know practice leads to perfection.
Right.
But they don't look at education by, hey, how can you ask an 18-year-old, what are you going to do with the rest of your life, and they can't tell you their roadmap to success? That's what we say the students need to ask.
Yeah.
If you got a student that know their purpose for coming to school,
right.
You got a student that doesn't act out anymore.
Right.
You got a student that's going to give you good attendance.
Right.
You got students that are going to do their work and stay out of trouble. Now you get the focus is on them. So when we talk about that student layer, we say we got to strengthen the student. Make sure they know why they come to school every day. We say get them exposed.
Right.
Get them the experience.
Right.
And now they want the education.
Right. And again, students who possess, you know, we know, we're not here to talk about the research and all that. We do that during our workshop, but we know what the research is telling us. Mm-hmm. Kids that possess those social emotional skills, those non-cognitive skills, are more likely to be successful than kids who don't. It is not the cognitive thing alone, the cognitive ability alone that causes young people to be unsuccessful. So I agree. How do you get kids to be resilient?
I remember, you remember the conference we were at that time, and I heard this guy named Bill Setlicek speaking. And I came to get you. I said, you got to hear this man.
Right.
First of all, he was an older white guy, about 76 years old.
Right.
And he had a Negro League baseball shirt on.
Right.
After I got past that,
right,
and I started listening to him talk about these 8 non-cognitive skills. And then we started taking a curriculum that we put together that's now online as well, that kids can actually go in and gain those skills. And guess what he told us? One of the highest compliments we've ever made, we've ever heard before. When we went to see him that time, and we showed him our curriculum, he said, you all have taken what I've been doing for years and made it usable and practical with young people and their mentors alike. So when we met Setlicek, bless his soul, this man turned us on to something that we already were doing, but he gave it to us in the context to say, if you do this, and guess what he was using it for? You told me to decide.
It was the criteria that, one of the main criteria what they were using to decide or determine what students were going to receive the Bill and Melinda Gates scholarship.
That's crazy. I had no
Based
idea.
on his resurch. For him to tell us that, he actually invited us to his home. We stayed up in West Virginia to go see him. And we probably, just looking back at it, that was, I think, a catalyst that, okay, we're on to something. We're doing this work.
Right.
And then to build and what people don't realize, and I think what we realize, and unbeknownst to us, it was intentional.
Right.
It was deliberate.
Right.
And when you are intentional and deliberate, again, we go back to how do I get a young person turned on to living?
So I get them
because I know who I am and I know where I'm going. I can then allow school to help me get there.
Right.
But when I come with just math, English, science, social studies, I might not be connected. Because remember, we have some kids who are bringing a rucksack full of stuff, and I might not be ready to learn.
So now that we know these 3 legs, and it's in place and they're strong, we're saying that schools can now do the things that they need to do for our kids, and in particular, you know, we got a purpose, we got a passion, and we're on a mission to save our boys. We say that proudly and we say that boldly. We've got to do something about what's happening with black boys around this country. What makes a black boy in Baltimore get a water bottle, a spray bottle, and a squeegee, and decide to go stand on the corner and wash windows as opposed to go to class? What makes black boys in Atlanta, Georgia, get a cooler full of water and stand on the side of the expressway and rather be called the water boys as opposed to going to school they're standing on the side of the road selling water? And we know what goes on at home when nobody's making them go. So we got to do what? We got to save our boys, man.
We got to, because you know, we know. Let's go ahead. You know, sometimes we say let's not air our dirty laundry.
We got to.
But we got to air. We got to say what some of the challenges, concerns are. It's with our black boys. Some people say black and brown boys, but it's with our boys. And if our boys don't know, don't understand, don't have that roadmap, doesn't have anybody in their lives that cause that to happen, then again, you're in this maze called life with no direction. And I always say, what do our boys need? It may be missing. Iron sharpen iron. We're asking fathers. Everybody doesn't have a father. So what happens when someone does? You have to have a community approach. Somebody has to come in that school, and if you were gifted enough, you need to be able to come to that school to help schools get to that place so boys are not lost on that journey, and they are missing. You think about it, in some cities, 40 to 50% of our boys are not graduating from high school. When we were vice president and deans at a college, we were recruiting, getting young boys there, but our black boys after the first semester were leaving. Retention. Why? Wasn't they didn't have the cognitive skill, it was those other things that's caused them not to. And when you start thinking of what are those things we're referring to or referencing, it's a myriad. And I think that's another start point. Grit, resilience. How do I get that? How do I build that? Now you're telling me I'm broke, I'm poor, I see other kids coming with stuff. I want some of that stuff as well. How do I get it?
So we've identified these 3 legs, and we want to make sure we go back and look at impact. So if you're working with student achievement, in order for a student to start doing better in school, they got to understand why they're in school. So we look at that leg around how do we get students to get on the track that you want them on. Stop looking at graduation rates and stop looking at test scores, because they'll get there if they understand why they're there.
That's right.
Then you look at the impact of high performing culture and climate. That's all about getting your school together. You got to know you got to do that first. Some of the most successful principals in the country told us, hey, look, I'm not doing anything. They've been put into pits. They've been put in some of the worst schools in the city, but guess what they want to do? If I start with culture and climate, I can do everything else. So we're gonna fix that culture and climate first.
And that last one, imagine parents and families and the school are connected at the hip. I don't imagine, and that impact of that parent and that school being together. Now you have all 3 legs that are strong, all 3 legs, because whenever one of them, and so that impact, when you start looking at all 3 elements, that's what we're talking about when we say creating success is creating a high-performing culture and climate in the school, in the classroom, in the building, in the parents, in the home, and then ultimately, how do we get that young person turned on to living? Thus, that's where you're going to get success. And as a result of those things, academics will be a byproduct.
So where do we go from here? I mean, we talk about next steps, what our next podcast, because I think we already got the most dynamic person that we can actually bring on. We're not gonna let anybody onto his name, but we're gonna bring him on because we know he's done the work. We mentored him, we watched this young man grow, and he told us, Reggie, Tony, if I ever get my school, the first thing I'm gonna do is call y'all because we're gonna get this culture and climate. So that's probably gonna be I guess we could say that's gonna be our first guest.
Well, first guest, but I'm going to talk about him a little bit because the first time he started crying because he was angry because he was mad about a statement. But I'm not going to go there now. We'll explain it. Former football player, now principal, and now he said, you guys were my mentors then, and now when I have my school,
looking forward to it.
I'm really looking forward to it. So
we got a lot of work. As you know, I like to say the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. So we're the laborers. We're ready to do the work, and we're going to do whatever it takes to do the work and make it happen.
I just close out by saying this. I'm so happy we're at this place, and what the potential of showcasing so many good people who are out here doing this work. But ultimately, the impact of what it's going to do for more kids. I guess that's why I'm at.
Thanks to Annette Owens, my mom, and my dad, rest his soul. Thank you so much for everything.
And of course, my mother, who's no longer here, Imagine, but she gave us that foundation. And I'm just excited about where we're going. So I'm on this journey. We're on this journey. Let's keep it going.
On our next show, we're excited to spotlight a visionary principal who made a transformative decision to prioritize and foster a high-performing culture and climate within their school. We'll delve into the strategic choices and innovative approaches they implemented to create an environment where both students and staff thrive. Tune in as we explore the impactful journey of this leader and the remarkable results of their dedication to building a culture of excellence.